I just want to show you a couple things. I would put this under the category of kind of tips and tricks if you are looking to do something. Um, there's two projects here. They're meant to sort of work together. One is going to let you set up a, a practice. Hang on here. So a practice that basically you define the practice and you set up I'm sorry, let me go back. The practice is sort of defined initially by a name, and then once you have the name of the practice, then you're going to have all the different locations for the practice. And so you go through, and there's multiple instances, one for each of the sites for the practice. So it just consists basically of an address and some notes. What I was just going to make sure that you saw is how you can like represent this data if necessary. I'll tell you why I did this. We were playing around with how this is going to work with a separate project that will have people that are providers, and we want to link them to the individual sites and have them integrated together with the data that exists between the two. So in one way I was playing with how to display an address once you pull in the basic information above. This is very, very rough. I just want to say that right up front. And then I wanted to take and display the address on one line. This address all was something else I was working on, but irrelevant to this discussion. Anyway, so two ways of displaying all this data above. And so if I take a look at the design, in case you ever need to do this, what you want to do is use the set value action tag. And I just took and what you're doing is making sure that you put all the syntax for what you want to have happen inside single quotes. So there is a practice address in the city, state, zip, and county. And it's all really, even though we're dealing with variables here and a set value, you still can use HTML type of programming within here to have an action. So we're just creating a line break here. And so it manifests like I showed you right here. Now, I'm also using Manny's removal of his JavaScript to remove any underscores of data that doesn't exist. So for example, without his JavaScript, that is, again, I know that you've seen this before, but I'll come back to this. This REDCap JavaScript injector, it's configured, and we see how to get rid of these lines. So I'm using that here. If I didn't use it because the county is blank, there would be, 3 underscores here, whatever. Same with, and because it's project related, then it's going to remove them wherever it finds it. So I got these two different options. Then over in this other project, what we want to do is take a provider different than the practice. the provider and apply that provider to one of the practices that have already been defined. If the practice hasn't been defined, then you won't be able to pull it up over here and associate the provider to the practice. So basically, if I look at a new record, I'm going to put in the name of the provider. And I'm just going to save that, and then I'm going to go over to my detail for the provider, which will allow me to associate where they, what practice they're associated to. So when I come down here, I'm going to choose the practice name, and I'll show you the design for this in a minute. You would not be able to do this. This is generated by some code that we write for you, but I did want you to know the possibilities so that if you wanted to do something like this, you would know you could come to us and we could help you with this. But this is referencing all the practices here. Okay, so we've entered all these different practices, and now we're here and we can choose any one of them. So if I just choose the first one, I want to be able to choose the location, but for this particular, to make this work, and we've done this with some other projects. Once you do make the selection, in order to link the actual location of the practice, you have to click Save and Stay first. Once you click Save and Stay, it can tie the location options to the practice name. So if we click here, we see now the 3 locations for this particular practice. Behind the scenes, this is all, and the reason you can't do it is, I'm sorry, is that it requires, where am I? It requires an option that's not available to you, and that is a dynamic SQL field. And we would write this for you. Both of these work the same way. This one first selects the practice here, and the second takes, once you have populated this practice and then saved it, then it will go out and look for the locations for that particular practice. Now, why do you have to use the save and stay? Because if you think about it, when you enter data into a field, and this is no different than any other online form, whether you're on Amazon or REDCap, until you actually hit some kind of save button, the data you've entered into there does not actually exist in the database. You haven't saved it. So this field wants to reference this field, but it can't reference the field because even though it's showing up here, it hasn't been saved. So you can't really connect this field to the previous field. Once you click on Save and Stay, and I'm going to just delete this data for a minute, so we go back and see how this looked. Notice that this box is completely collapsed. Normally, that means that the code behind the box itself is not really working right. And if you click on it, nothing happens. It's because this is totally based on what happens previously. So once you choose here, you still don't have any options until you click on Save and State, and this value is actually saved in the database. When you do that, this now expands because it now has something to reference. It's going to look here and then connecting through the little piece of code that we would write for you. You can now pull up all the locations for that. So I just wanted to let you see what's possible in tying two different projects together like that. There are times where you may want to populate multiple fields on one project based on fields in a second project. It doesn't work that way here. That's a whole different way of we would have to write a whole different solution for that. And I wanted to get back here real quick just to point out why I created this address one line, because in creating this one line, I can now reference this field. The set value occurs once the record is saved. And then when I come over here to the providers, I can pull that field because it's been concatenated, nicely the way I want to store that information. And that's how I can pull this up. And again, if there is a county, it's showing. And if there's not, instead of the underlines, they've been removed thanks to Manny's JavaScript that we've shown before. But is posted on our YouTube site and our website.